Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Eternal Essentials. Today we're going to talk about more timeless magic theory articles. In part 2 I will have a bunch of Post-Dojo theory content that is very helpful and generally still meaningful and applicable to a lot of card games, especially card games that are that closely related to Magic like Eternal. So let's dive right in. Okay, so first we have Riefer with examining the theories of card advantage and quality. He talks about card advantage, quality advantage, virtual card advantage, all that sort of stuff, and card evaluation, and just dives further into the whole topic that has been built upon before by some of the dojo content from last time. So if you want to dive deeper into some heavy theory crafting on resource advantages in resource-based card games, check this out. Alright, on to the next article. We have the Ferret's Is That Your Card? Starts out with quite a tangent on a neat little story, but later dives heavily into card evaluation and not getting overly attached to bad cards for the wrong reasons. Talks about how bad cards are still bad cards even if they can randomly win you games in narrow situations, and kind of like is meant to shake you to properly reevaluate cards, not just based on individual cases where they may have won you the game, and ask the right questions when evaluating whether a card is actually good and should be in your deck and stuff like that. I think that's a pretty good piece. It's fairly short. And while that topic might not apply to everyone, I think there's plenty of people out there that could use articles like this to sort of get to the next level, get better at evaluating cards, get better at building and tuning decks, and better at like deciding which cards should be in your deck and which shouldn't, and not get overly attached to the wrong cards for the wrong reasons. Alright, so next article is Peter Jahn's Basics of Playing the Game, Paranoia is Good. This basically deals with how and when to do certain things, and especially with the information part of the game. Here in the initial note basically says, this is a primer, it discusses some basic theory, the fact that bluffing is good, revealing your hand is bad, and the main reason you should never, well almost never play anything during your first main phase. If you know the theory, really know it, then it won't be much more than a refresher course, but with deck lists. So there you have it. I think this is a little less relevant to some extent, since a lot of things that look at your hand only look at the specific card types that are relevant to it in this game, and you can't like accidentally or voluntarily reveal your hand like some people might have done in Magic occasionally, stuff like that. But the information part is still sort of relevant. Discussing bluffing is kind of relevant, although bluffing is a bit harder in Eternal due to how the stops work and stuff, because they sometimes give away your bluff or give away that it's not a bluff. But there's still a lot of potential bluffs, like bluff attacks and stuff like that, and the whole not playing things before combat still holds true, even if it potentially gives away some information with stops. More often than not, giving away more information by playing something before attacking rather than by showing them potential stop, giving them a chance to see a potential stop. But yeah, this dives into these aspects and why it's better to be more paranoid than less paranoid in these types of games, and should be helpful and insightful to a lot of people regardless. Next we have more building on Who's the Beatdown that we talked about last time, which was originally by Mike Flores. Mowshowitz dives into Who's the Beatdown and builds on what Mike Flores has set the groundwork for in Who's the Beatdown 2, Multitasking, and talks more about like what the realizations of Who's the Beatdown mean and how there is potential multitasking going on, that you're potentially struggling for beating down and for taking control of the game, and discusses examples, and also just draws further conclusions from Who's the Beatdown, the whole concept of inevitability and how it applies, and that Who's the Beatdown is more about not so much about who is control and who is aggro, as highlighted here in the quote. The whole idea of Who's the Beatdown isn't that you need to know which of these two roles you are taking, it's that you need to know what each player needs to accomplish to win, and that sort of stuff. So it's a very helpful and deep piece on properly evaluating how to win the game that you're in, like what you have to do and what your opponent has to do, and how to properly react to that in order to win the game. And this is still one of the aspects that is probably the hardest in playing these types of games, and the mistakes that you see the most players make. They just completely reevaluate their role or reevaluate what they have to do to win and what their opponent has to do to win, and play into what their opponent needs to accomplish to win, and just basically work against themselves without realizing it. It's very important, so I heavily recommend reading the whole Who's the Beatdown related stuff to get better at winning games. Just understand how to win games, how to keep your opponent from winning games. Be able to do that independently of what deck you're playing against which deck. This is a very essential concept, or like whole group of concepts basically. And next we have another article by Svi called Learning Curve Magic Foundations. He basically just talks about his own writing, learning curve in the game, and foundations in Magic. It's a fairly long theory piece, but it deals with learning Magic and getting better at Magic and so on. And I can basically highly recommend almost anything written by Svi Mowshowitz. He's one of the highest regarded theory content producers that Magic ever had that I can think of, especially in the late Dojo and Post-Dojo era. And he just, in my experience, dives deeper into complex Magic theory than any other writer that I have read from in my life, and really pick things apart and goes on a super deep meta level on a lot of things. It's really enlightening, helpful to understand the game at a whole different level and become a lot better at the game, all of its aspects. Next we have Grand Unified Theory, Philosophy of Fire. That's another old school basic theory that is also linked here. Oh no, it's not available anymore apparently, but you can try and Google it, the original Philosophy of Fire. But this is basically building on another Mike Flores basic concept. Like Mike Flores was coming up with some very groundbreaking fundamental theory stuff in the Dojo area that Mike Flores expanded on later, and this is no different. Philosophy of Fire deals with the concept of direct damage in general, and how you can work on a completely different angle than card advantage or tempo, and just sort of measure cards in the philosophy of Fire, in the average damage they need to deal, and build decks based on that philosophy and how you need a specific average damage per card in your deck to evaluate how many cards you need to see on average to be able to kill your opponent, and how to apply these things and how these impact deck building and also playing against these decks and stuff like that. It's a pretty good concept for red aggressive decks with a lot of direct damage that try to kill the opponent quickly, which we also have in Eternal, so this is a pretty helpful piece if you're interested in understanding aggressive deck building and playing better, and how to evaluate cards for them, and how to evaluate situations and stuff like that. And it is also interesting or relevant potentially, want to get better at playing against them and beat them potentially. Okay, and last but not least, we have the actual Grand Unified Theory. This is a whole series of articles, 5 articles as you can see here. This is a super epic 15,000 plus word series by Mowshowitz once again, focusing on advantage theory in general. It tries to set a whole formula and generally applicable theory to apply to any situation in any card game, to evaluate who has the advantage and what advantage and so on. It's just diving on a pretty deep meta level of advantage theory in general. Starts with the Grand Unified Theory, where he just outlines his endeavor, then deals with virtual card advantage and tempo, and so on and so forth. Don't go through all of it here, because it's pretty long, pretty extensive, and pretty heavy stuff. It's no easy reading actually. It's pretty complex and complicated stuff, but it's well worth the read. So if you want to dive really deep into complex advantage theory for card games, this is a masterpiece. I can only recommend to read it, even though it might be a bit tedious or mind-bending at times, because it is at times a pretty complicated, abstract stuff that he's talking about, but it's well worth it. Alright, that concludes this part of Timeless MTG theory articles. I hope you guys enjoyed it once again with the Post-Dojo era articles. I have at least one more part coming up with sort of the modern day era, where I have a bunch of articles to share with you next time. So if you enjoyed this one, like down below and subscribe, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on any future content. Check my social media over here and catch me live streaming on Twitch on a fairly regular basis, but follow me and turn on the notifications there as well. Not miss when I go live, because I don't have a fixed schedule. Alright, that's it again for Eternal Essentials, Timeless MTG theory articles. I'm ManuS. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Bye.